Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you from around Australia for joining us today for the Write a Book in a Day online, how to conduct a competition online webinar. My name is Kimberly. I am, I guess, the person who looks after Write a Book in a Day from the Kids Cancer Project. I love the competition, and it's yeah, I guess we're all adapting to things a little bit differently wherever we are around the country with lockdown. And we're looking at how we can kind of adapt this competition for our different circumstances. So I'm very pleased to have with us today Alicia and Kylie. Alicia and Kylie, they have both participated in Write a Book in a Day for a number of years, and they participated last year via their lockdowns from Victoria. So I'll just run through a bit of an agenda for what we'll kind of go through today. An introduction, which I've almost covered off. Some key dates for Write a Book in a Day this year. We'll do the Q&A with Alicia and Kylie, and then we'll have some questions from viewers. We do have 2 questions that came through beforehand as well, so we'll cover those off. And just a note, we are recording this webinar so that we'll share it on the website, the Write a Book in a Day website, once this is finished, just for anyone who might be interested, or if you want to go back to it at any point. So just on the key dates, as I think most of you should have been able to see from an email that went around last week, we have extended the competition to the 30th of September this year. We do understand that it's really challenging with a full calendar of events that schools have, working from home, from lockdown. The students aren't necessarily, they might not be at the pace of learning that you would be in the classroom. So we have extended the competition, and that means all aspects of the competition as well. So that's last day to write, as well as funds to the Kids Cancer Project. This extending of the competition, we can extend to the 30th of September, and that still allows us to be able to announce the winners at a decent time, which is around the middle of November. Some people have written in June, so we need to make sure we do finish this competition off by the end of the year. So that's why we are extending to the 30th of September and not longer, even if our lockdowns do unfortunately continue. So yeah, as I mentioned, I wanted to welcome Kylie. So Kylie, do you want to give us a wave?
Hi.
Kylie's from Box Hill High School, and Kylie participated last year for the first time. And you had, I think it was 7 teams of 5 to 7 students, and even one of your teams, Novelty, they won the best book upper division for the Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania area. So well done to Kylie, and thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And then Alicia, you're in your 3rd year of participating, is that correct? Yeah, perfect. And so last year, Corowa Anglican Girls School, you had 3 teams with about 9 to 10 students in each?
Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. And yeah, as I mentioned before, my name's Kimberly. I look after the competition here, and if you ever pick up the phone, you're probably talking to me. And yeah, I love everything about this competition, so hopefully I am helpful for you all. So I guess before we get into the Q&A about your online Write a Book in a Day, can you tell us what your students got out of participating last year and why you would recommend it to other teachers and teams?
I think, sorry. For us, I think our girls missed out on a lot of things last year because we were in lockdown for so long in Victoria. So it was so exciting for them to actually participate in a competition. They loved the teamwork as well. And I think that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day was huge for them.
Yeah. And Kylie?
Yeah, I think the same. Like, we signed up for this at the start of the year prior to lockdown happening, and then obviously realised in the lead up that we were going to be doing this in lockdown. But I think the idea of writing something for a real world audience, that their books would be read by an audience, regardless of whether they actually entered into the judgment or the competition element of it. So it had a meaning for all of the groups that participated, not just those that really wanted to sort of have their book judged, which was really important. And I reminded them of that today when I had a meeting with my students and said, these books have a purpose. They are going in to be read by students your own age. So I think that sort of is a driving factor for our kids.
All right, so the first question we'll start with is, how did you prepare for your writing day? So I've obviously put some points here, everyone, just to kind of start us off. But Alicia, what would you say? How did you prepare for your writing day?
So I made some documents for the girls with the rules and things rather than giving them the whole booklet. Just made some documents that they had access to, so they would print those and have them at their workstations ready. And then in the lead up, we had some meetings. So we had a meeting the week before to run through what was required for the competition and what they needed. And then we had a team on Microsoft Teams, so I could keep sending them little messages, just to send them little reminders, because I think, unfortunately, it's a little bit trickier to remember things when they're in distance learning.
Yeah. And Kylie, what would you say?
Yeah, very similar, I guess. Just going through the booklet and trying to chunk down the information that they really needed to know, and the stuff that was sort of probably more relevant for me, and making sure that they had a scaffold to go off if they wanted to, but not necessarily, if they didn't want to use it. And when I say scaffold, I mean more a scaffold with timings for the day. So, the idea of, having, and I said to the students today in the meeting, you don't need to stick to this exactly, but if you give yourself targets, so perhaps by 10:30, you've ticked off a chapter, or, you're in the process of reviewing a chapter, and then by lunchtime, you give yourself another target, 2 o'clock, another target, so that they had some working points throughout the day as well, to work towards. And then, like I said, even if they didn't stick to those time frames that I'd given them, they had something that they could sort of map out for themselves, and work towards. And then we sort of all said, okay, like at 5 o'clock, we should all be in a position where you're sort of reviewing and editing your book. And that was really important for us, because I thought, this is the first time we've participated, and we're not in a classroom situation where you can float around and ask people naturally, how are you doing? Has everyone got a role and things like that? It's much more challenging when you're just popping in and out of their, remote spaces that you've created for them, and you pop in and, some students are talking more than others and things like that. It's yeah. So that was really important for me to provide, whether they used it or not. Some teams seem to have all of that in, and clearly had worked together on other projects in the school, whereas some students sort of tagged on, wanted to be part of this event, didn't have a team, came and joined a team that was sort of established, and those groups needed a little bit more, I guess, support to get their ideas on the table and things like that. So
perfect. I think we'll also cover off some more of that, like keeping students motivated, towards the end of the Q&A. So I actually thank you, Alicia, for sharing your document here on competition expectations. This is something you shared with your students beforehand, and I think it's really nice to make sure everyone was feeling comfortable about what the day ahead was going to be, and kind of just so that they could enjoy the experience. So I think this is a really great idea, making sure you're comfortable, having a lead in discussions. I think everyone wants to enjoy the day, and that's like, the competition is meant to be fun. It's a challenge, but it's fun. So I think having these competition expectations set out beforehand is a really good idea as well. So how did you prepare your students for the writing day? I think you probably covered off some of these points before in the previous question as well, but is there anything else, I guess, you wanted to add? Kylie or Alicia?
I think sharing the expectations was really important, just so everyone knew what was expected of them during the day, so there were no surprises. And I think too, probably having time check-ins, so trying to give them some time away from this kind of group situation, so it wasn't too overwhelming during the day, and having time check-ins kept them kind of on target for what they needed to complete.
We did the same. I had another colleague work with us, so we had 7 teams, and we had an allocated half an hour with each of those teams throughout the whole day, and it just went. I don't even know where the time went. So we had a half an hour with 3 teams, and my other colleague had half an hour with the other 4 teams, and then we would swap. And that half an hour might have been 10 or 15 minutes of us just being in the space and listening to the conversations and saying, oh, that sounds really good, and how are you thinking about incorporating some of those key words, and just making sure that they were still thinking about all of those requirements. And then, as I said, those timed sessions, they just went. So, but at least the students were aware of the fact that we were dropping in at a particular time, so that they were like, oh, here's Miss, and she's, yep, I can see that you're on the call now. And, you know, and it was lovely, because sometimes you'd drop in and they'd be mid discussion, or, you know, mid creative ideas going everywhere, and it was just lovely to observe as well. So that was really important.
Yeah.
I was lucky at the start of the day. I managed to have a staff member with each team. We were able to use our library staff, so that was quite helpful, because I know a lot of teachers are busy during distance learning, but if perhaps there's other staff in the school that can be utilised, that's also handy.
That's a great. On this next slide, I've included the narrative structure that you used, Kylie. So I guess this is one of those resources you shared with your students beforehand as well?
Yeah, can I just say, I have a colleague in New South Wales who shared this with me. So I would love to tell you who created it, because she was working with another teacher last year, and not last year, the year before, and they came up with this. And she said to me last year, when she told me about this competition, oh, it's great, and here's a writing structure that we use. So I've asked her if I could share this, and yeah, she gave me this, and it was really, really good. And even though some teams might not have used it, they still had this to fall back on if they needed to or wanted to. So yeah, some teams used it and other teams didn't.
I also like, I mean, you've got the parameters and the random words and like ideas for images. So you're covering off like all of the requirements, you know, to make sure you've got illustrations throughout the book, and to use those random words and parameters. I think sometimes you're so involved in the process of writing the book that these things could be forgotten. So if you're doing it at the planning stage, that's like really great for the students to make sure they're, you know, don't have to try and slot in a random word like in the editing process. So that's really great. Awesome, thank you. So I've actually got an example from each of you as well for this, as well as one that we have on the Write a Book in a Day website. So I guess, yes, you did all have a timeline for the day. So I'll start with, this is the Cora schedule. And obviously everyone listening, your schedule will probably be different depending on what time you choose to start the day. Obviously the competition runs from 8 till 8. Some schools do choose to shorten that. So, you know, it might change, but is there any comments you wanted to make about this, Alicia, or anything you would change? If you did?
I'm not sure I'd change anything. The only thing I'd say is I think it was important around that 11 to 1 point to just give them some time to have their cameras off and not be on screen chatting with each other and just getting into the writing process. So scheduling that for them worked quite well. Yeah,
that's a good point. All right, well, I'll move on to the, so this was over 2 slides, Kylie, that I've put yours. But I can see you've got some things here in red as well. You've got your breaks clearly marked. Anything you wanted to comment on this?
Yes, the switch narratives takes a long time, more than I.
When you say switch narratives, like are they switching within their group, or are they switching like with a?
It depended. If you go to the next slide, I'm not sure if it says it, but we actually had the idea of swapping the story with another group, which was really beneficial for some groups. So they shared some of their story with one other group, and that took a little bit longer because they got a little bit of feedback. And obviously, again, because you're trying to do it in a remote, you know, like it's not in person, so they're trying to, so that took a little bit longer. And also, I think that when I started to say something to the students again today, I had a group who did these fabulous illustrations, but then it got to about 5 o'clock before they started to put the book together. And I thought that if they started that and did that throughout the day. So when chapter 1 was done and they had completed that illustration for chapter 1, that they started to have somebody working on putting that image into that book space, because I had a group that were really struggling with that at the end of the day, sort of left it till 5 o'clock to incorporate the images in with the text, and then the text would move and somebody was like, oh, that's not working, and the text moved and I don't want the picture there, and they were still trying to grapple with that at 7:30 and then getting quite stressed about it. So I said, that's something that I reminded them today, and maybe we start and work on that throughout the day, as opposed to leaving that to the last hour, which takes longer than an hour to sort of incorporate your images in your text and things.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point. I know how hard it is to format documents, let alone when you're under time. So yeah, that's a really good reminder for team coordinators when speaking with students. This is the one we did up online. It was based off one that was on like an in-person, and I've kind of amended this, but I did kind of include, as you've mentioned, like a video check-in with teams. I do think, I mean, each I'm not a teacher, as I think I've said to many of you before, but I think that as a student writing in this competition, and if you are, if you know what chapters you're writing, having some time off screen might be nice. I guess each team coordinator will know their students better, but having a video check-in with your team scheduled, and maybe and making sure you have those breaks in there, I think it's really important. I know myself when I'm working, and if I am working from home, that you really do need to schedule those times to see some sunshine, to talk to somebody else who's in the household. So I think having these time plans really do help, would help the students. So yeah, moving on. So did you provide any special communications to parents before the writing day?
So we sent home a permission form to actually make sure parents are aware their daughters are participating, and in that we specified that if they noticed at any point that their daughter was struggling, because obviously we're not there with them like we would be in person, just to give us a call. So we had a phone number available that parents could call if their daughter was struggling a little bit.
Yeah. And Kylie?
Yes, when I think we went back into stage 4, I think the week before we had it planned. So I sent out an email to parents to say that obviously the students would be in a space, because obviously we did our event on Teams, and I set up a 12-hour meeting per group. And because of that, I can't be in that space all of those 12 hours. So I think just informing parents that they would be in this online space, unsupervised for some of that time, which is what would happen naturally in a classroom, because you would just naturally wander around and leave different groups to go about it. But obviously, because it's all moved online, that just for them to be aware, because obviously we're not that, and the fact that they could initiate calls, create those chats, and it's just making sure parents are on board with all of that. And the fact that they're online for 12 hours, and even though it's a group event, they're on their own as well a lot of that time. So yes, if they're struggling, just to give us a heads up so that we can sort of get onto that before they sit there for long periods of time and get potentially upset about trying to participate on their own, or
that makes sense. And I think also, I mean, in the environment of working from home, and if there are other people in the household, if they've got the schedule beforehand, or if at least that parent knows what they're doing for the day, they can have snacks ready at a certain time, or if they are going back on the computer after dinner, or they might need an earlier dinner or something to work in with that schedule, that kind of is made aware. I think, that's really helpful. So great to have some communications with parents as well. So you touched on this before, Kylie. So you said you use Teams?
Yeah, Microsoft Teams, and the students were using this prior to this competition, which was really good because they were familiar with it. They knew how to, get in and operate a lot of the settings. So that was good for us.
And did they use anything like Google Docs when they were writing the documents, or?
Yes, I set up a Google Doc that they all had access to, so, and including myself. So I sometimes could just drop in and have a look at the Google Doc, as opposed to dropping into the meeting, and yeah, you can see multiple students contributing or multiple students writing different chapters at different times. So yeah, there was lots of other check-in points that you could have a look at without necessarily going in and interrupting their conversation or their writing flow or whatever. So yes, yeah, we had a collective document set up.
That's awesome. And Alicia, what about you guys?
We used Teams as well. So I made one big team with 3 channels for each of the teams that were writing on the day. So it was easy to duck in and out of those. And then instead of Google Docs, we just used shared Word documents using Office 365 or whatever it is. So the students all had access to those and it was saving along the way. So it was really handy.
Awesome. And how did the students work on illustrations? I'll go to you, Alicia, first.
So our girls have styluses with their computers, so they were able to draw on their computers, but we also had some artwork that was being done on paper, and they just use their phones to take photos and add those to their books.
Yeah, awesome. And Kylie?
I had one, the winning book spoke about this in our meeting today. One of the girls did the initial sketches and drawings, and then she uploaded it to Teams. One of her team members downloaded it and they did all of the colouring, and then they shared it back to the group, and somebody else was responsible for the formatting, because I was trying to talk about the illustrations today and say that I'm not all over that particular part, but I have students who are using iPads or different technology to create their illustrations, and I said I think everything, in terms of, as long as it's original, you can use it. If you have an app that you're familiar with and you're confident to use, then by all means go ahead and use it, and just as long as you can share it with the group and keep that collaborative process going, then I think it's okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we do have on the website there is a news article, I think it is, with some ideas for how to illustrate as well. But what you've mentioned is like fantastic. I think yeah, as long as they're copyright-free images, preferably, I guess they've drawn it themselves, but copyright-free, they are okay to be used in their books. And yeah, I mean, some of these things like a stylus, I don't really understand what that is, but I mean, I'm a little bit behind in the illustration area, but yeah, it's fantastic that there are so many tools out there that people can use. So yeah, that's awesome. And I also included this, Kylie, your visual literacy planner, which I hadn't seen before. This is a good idea as well. Any comments you wanted to make on this?
Again, just keeping that focus to say who is, I don't know whether this is right or not, but I've said to my groups, allocate, so somebody should be responsible for the illustrations, because you don't want to get to the end of the day and then find that you've got it then illustrated. Like if somebody is all over this and if you can convey a really short, sharp explanation of what's going on in one chapter and give that to the illustrator, not only will that help you focus your writing and keep it clear about what happens in each chapter, because I think sometimes the idea of finishing a chapter and where does it lead to the next one can be quite challenging. So if you can give that to an illustrator, it helps you focus your writing, and then the illustrator can go away and try and create something based on what you're telling them is happening in that chapter.
Yeah,
and
no,
this
that's
just
great.
helped.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, like when we spoke with the winning team from Abbotsleigh, that they won the New South Wales division last year, and they had a dedicated illustrator, and they did plan at the beginning of the day what they would, like what scenes they would illustrate. So I think that is a really good point. It should be in the planning process for the students, and look, each team coordinator to their own in how they like to run. I know that some schools prefer that everyone has a chance to write a chapter. The winning team from Abbotsleigh last year, they spoke about how they paired up, and they kind of had you know, they could bounce ideas off each other for the writing, and then they had the dedicated illustrator. So there is no right or wrong in I don't think. Alicia, do you have an opinion on this?
The only thing I would say is when I ask students to sign up, I kind of make a point of the fact that this isn't just for students who are strong in writing. We are also looking for students who love their art. So we often have the girls sign up as an illustrator or an author before they even start the competition, because I think it's important. It's one of the nice things about this competition is it celebrates different strengths.
Awesome. No, that's good. I think that's a way that probably a lot of schools, when I'm talking to them, are doing it, are running the competition. But yeah, it's about having a go. This competition is about challenging yourself and having a go and having fun. So yeah, that's awesome. So how did you keep students motivated during the day? I'll go to you first, Kylie.
I wish I could tell you, but I don't think I can. Every time I dropped into this, I don't know whether it was because it was the first time that we had participated. So there was a real hype and excitement about this competition. It was something that we had to look forward to because we were in the middle of this long extended lockdown. So it was a really nice collaborative day. And even though it was long, and when I was speaking to we've got 2 groups who participated last year participating again, and I think that they would have much preferred to do it in person. So they're kind of up for, I think they're getting their head around the fact that we may be doing this online again. But yeah, it was a really nice day that every time, quite genuinely, every time I dropped into a group, they were mid-discussion or I think one of our groups teamed up, like you explained earlier, with the Abbotsford team, I think, and had paired up. So when they were writing chapters, they were collaborating on a chapter together, and you'd come in and they'd be mid-conversation about whether a sentence made sense or a word could be interchanged with something else, or like I said, the 3 that were focusing on the illustrations and working on different elements, but they had really clear roles. That's the other thing. Like these kids had really clear roles themselves, and they clearly worked together on other things, or been, were strong friendship groups. So those teams were easier than the teams where, one person had necessarily joined at the last, to make up a number or wanted to be part of this but didn't have a team themselves. So those groups, I think I focused a little bit more time dropping in and out of that team just to check in and see if everything was going okay. But look, I was really fortunate. The kids were really excited and really motivated. So I have nothing to say with this. They just did it, and I was really grateful, and it was a really positive event.
I will ask, the book share that you mentioned earlier on, do you think that also kept them motivated because they knew they were going to have to share with other people?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. They knew this from the start. So I'd given them a time frame that they were working towards. So at 5 o'clock, we would all be sharing. They knew which teams they would be sharing with. And I guess leading up to that time too, I knew which teams needed a little bit of extra motivation and reminder that they were coming up to that time frame and they were sharing that. So it didn't necessarily need to be finished, but they needed to get a move on to get their story completed, and maybe utilize some of the feedback.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And Alicia, what would you add to this?
I had a similar experience. I think because the students had signed up for it themselves, they were really motivated the entire day. In fact, it was a bit hard to get them to sign off at the end of the day and tell them it was over. To be honest, they were just enjoying each other's company. The one thing I did do is think carefully about grouping. So normally I'd probably group them with peers from a different year level, or perhaps people they don't know as well. But last year I decided, since we were online, to group them with familiar people.
Okay. A point to anyone else who's watching, that if you do need help changing any team members around, I can help with that as well. You can do it on the team coordinator portal, but that can get a bit tricky. So do reach out if you need any help doing that. So that's a great tip. Thank you, Alicia. So what was the overall feedback from the students? Alicia, I'll go to you first.
I think for the students last year, it was a bit of a highlight of the school calendar, purely because we couldn't run a lot of the competitions we normally participate in, and I think they were just thrilled with themselves. And I think also sitting back and seeing that they'd done something during a time when they were probably a little less productive than usual, they didn't have their team sports or co-curricular things happening. It was really special for them to have accomplished.
Did you have feedback from parents or?
Yeah, parents were thrilled as well, actually. I think they were just excited to see their kids so engaged for a whole day.
Awesome. And Kylie?
Yeah, they really, the feedback when we got back into school was fantastic, and like we've had 2 teams sign up again this year. I had one team that they're currently in year 12, so they didn't want that extra commitment, but they did really enjoy the day, and they gave me feedback and were happy to come and talk to the students at the start of this year about the experience. So they turned up for the meeting and were really quite positive about the day and the purpose of the day, and kind of making sure that, you know, people who were signing up or thinking of signing up, were aware of the positives of, you know, what they got out of it, which was really nice.
Cool. Thank you. I think this question here, like about the tips to make sure that everyone felt comfortable and included and that everyone had a voice when they were sharing. I guess some of it you touched on before, Alicia, when you mentioned grouping with people that they were familiar with. Anything else that you kind of made sure, just to make sure everyone had a voice, like they didn't feel, because I think on Zoom or Teams or whatever it might be, sometimes there is that one person who talks a little bit more. Is there a way that you kind of worked around that?
Because we kind of had one student in each group who is the team leader as such, we kind of briefed those girls on the fact that they needed to be really inclusive. So they were quite good at saying, we haven't heard from whoever.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
So that worked really well. And
Kylie?
No, the kids signed up. Most of the teams signed up as a group, so they've come with their peer. I haven't crossed over new groups and things. If I just said to them, if you've got a team, that's great. Minimum of 5, maximum of 10. Sign up. And it was last year. There was a couple of teams that wanted to go ahead, but didn't have enough in their team. And a couple of students who had emailed me, joined the school late, emailed me because they'd seen it promoted on our compass and just said, look, is there any possibility of us joining a team? And it was really nice to see those students sort of incorporate not only a new team member, but a new student to the school as well. And it was a lovely thing for them, a new student to get involved in, to meet people from the school in a situation where they probably wouldn't necessarily be able to meet them in a small cohort of students from their same year group, where they could potentially make some friendships before they actually got into the physical environment. So that was really nice.
That's great. That's wonderful. I have one last question. What are the challenges? What were the challenges you faced during the day, and what would you do differently? I'll go with you, Kylie, first.
It was a long day. And I think I think at the end of the day, when I'd organised this, I'd said to my husband as an offset, the only thing that could potentially happen now that I haven't ticked is the internet going down, and Melbourne had a freak storm, the tree next door, and lots of our school could not get onto to school that day. It was all on the news, and I had to hotspot from my phone, as did quite a few students also. So I'm hoping that, apart from that, that was one of the challenges that I can't. So internet connection, obviously, when people drop in and out, that can happen, and there's nothing, that we can do about that. And I guess just the end of the day, I kept coming back to that end of the day, because I feel like this year with the students at 5 o'clock, we might do that sharing at maybe 4 o'clock and push that back a little bit, so that at 8 o'clock, I like I said, I had those 2 teams that were just trying to, format their story, format their images with their text, and really grappling with that. And I said, this takes time, and they probably didn't allocate enough time for that. So I think that at 5 o'clock, 5:30, that's what I'd be saying to the students, like, you need to start having somebody look at the formatting. Hopefully you've already done this, but if you haven't, please make sure that somebody is focused on that for the next hour.
Cool. And Alicia?
So I guess from about 4 p.m. onwards, I was on my own with the 3 teams. So I had 3 devices in front of me, one with each team open, which was a little hectic. I think it was fine, but the end of the day when they were submitting, if they needed any help with that, I had to kind of spread myself thinly. So I'd probably have another staff member on hand just to jump in at that point, even for the last half hour would be really helpful.
Yeah.
I think they were the only challenges though, really. It went pretty smoothly. We were very lucky.
Yeah, well, with the team coordinator portal as well, everyone, you can have more than one person log in to that. So they would need to use your password and email, but there can be more than one person logged in at a time. This was a change made recently, so that it means that you could have more, teachers, teacher librarians on hand to help with that book upload process, because I know that it can take a bit of time to do that. So, and with the text and the plain text and the PDF, yeah, it can be a bit fiddly. So I definitely appreciate that.
I think one more thing, sorry, if you can, and I don't know if this is possible, but it helped having another screen, really, really helped. I didn't think it would, and I set it up anyway, and it really helped to have that other screen.
Two things, like two screens at the one time, so like a laptop and a desktop. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you kind of had two going at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good tips. This is great because, I mean, I love the competition and I do the admin type stuff on the side, and I try and make it easy for everyone, but I am not there doing it like you guys are. So these tips are fantastic. So thank you so much. I guess to sum up, I had thought about, the key tips. Provide your students with some resources. Set out expectations and plan for the day. Provide avenues to ask for help. So even, providing a phone number to the parents so that they know who to call if they can see their student is struggling, I think that's great. If possible, have another teacher on hand to help, especially at the end of the day. And overall have fun, because we want it to be a fun experience, and especially if we are in lockdown, something to just break up that monotony, something to look forward to that's a bit different. I think we all need it at the moment. So yeah. That's it. But what I'll say now is I'll open it up to any questions. If you're not comfortable asking questions here, I think everyone has access to the chat function. So my colleague Emma might jump in with some of these questions as well. Before we get onto those questions, I will answer the two questions that came in prior from some of the registrants. So there was a question about having 8 teams. So 8 teams riding on the one day. Would this be manageable? So Kylie, you had 7 teams. Mm-hmm. I know actually today we have a school in Sydney who are riding with 10 teams today. I think they do have more than one teacher resource.
Yes.
Do you think 8 teams, you've done 7 teams?
We had 2 teachers, so it wasn't just me, it was myself and a colleague. I'm very glad there was 2 of us. I must say, especially remotely, just being able to clock in, because I felt like even though we divided up our time for the entire day, it just went. So my time was taken up with the 4 that I'd allocated myself, and then, you were just mixing it up. So, and it's nice to get somebody else's ideas and fresh perspectives. So if I checked in with the team in the morning, my colleague checked in with them next. Yeah. So they'd had somebody else and somebody different to bounce off any questions or any problems that they had. So, yeah.
I think, just for the teacher who asked the question, I think the other option, if you are the only resource at the school who can help with this, having your team split over several days might be another option for you, if that's possible as well. And then I had a second question here, which was around like if we have a process document for Write a Book in a Day, or like the planning document. So I think the best document to use, it is a bit chunky, I will admit, is the manual. But I think Kylie and Alicia, you probably agree, like the manual is where you kind of go, that's the Bible to start with. So the manual is found on the resources page of the website. And then in addition to that, we have the online schedule that I have up there on the website, the one that we've created. And I think that's a good start. That's a good place as well. I think it's up there as a PDF at the moment, but I might put it up as a Word document just so it's easier to edit for everyone. And then that way you could, incorporate it, incorporate the elements for your school that you need to, or change things that you want. So Emma, I'll just ask you, have there been questions coming in throughout the
Yeah, we have one question in there that's sort of about the book that's going to be produced. So it is, how coherent does the narrative need to be, and does it end up reading like a series of short stories? So I'm guessing that's because of multiple students sort of getting involved and writing different chapters.
Okay, so I'll answer this one. The narrative should be coherent. It should be one story. It wouldn't, like, that's, I guess, when it comes to the planning of your book, the students, they should plan, this is the storyline, and this is what's going to happen in each chapter. And you want to have like that kind of consistent, you know, the character, if the main character is, I don't know, a dentist, and they have some kind of sense of humor, or, you know, like they have to kind of, it should be consistent throughout the book. It shouldn't read like short stories. And yeah, I guess that would be my answer to that. Yeah.
And a follow-on question from, sorry, a follow-up question from that was, how many chapters are you expecting to see? What's an average number?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the average number is, but there's probably, like, it also depends if you're writing as a primary, middle, or upper, because each section have different word limits. So in the manual, sorry, I don't have it to hand, but you know, it does change. So, you know, maybe a primary school, you're having like 5 chapters or something, and you might have more chapters when it gets up to the upper school, which I think is a total of 5,000 words in the max. So there is no right or wrong there, I don't think. I mean, I don't know, would you guys, Kylie or Alicia, would you say that you think? No, yeah, I think
no.
Yeah, I think for that, yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you the average at all, sorry.
It's probably worth the students having a look at the books that have been written previously. That helps them get an idea of what they should produce.
Right, so that's everyone who's listening, that's on the website. You'll see the online library, and you'll be able to have a look at the books from last year that were entered. So you'll be able to search them, I think, by state, but it is very clear what division they're in. And you'll also be able to see the winning books as well. And remembering that it's a competition, but it's not about winning. It's about having fun and entering and writing a book for children in hospital. So yeah, but definitely that's a great point, Alicia, having a look there and seeing what other students from around the country, from your state, what they're producing is a good kind of place to start.
And having the students, I just add, having the students spend that time in the planning stages to come up with an ending. And I keep coming back to it, because if they start writing without the end in sight, that, you know, I remember last year one group who were incredibly, they'd worked together before, they were really keen to get it, you know, they got to lunchtime and I said, how does your book end? Like, and they said, well, we don't know. And I said, oh, how many words have you got so far? Like, how many words can you play with still? Like, and they sort of hadn't really thought that through. They had so many ideas, and it was fantastic, and it was, you know, based on a genre. They loved fantasy, so they'd gone fantasy, but they just didn't know what the end goal was. So that's where they struggled. So if they'd spent that extra half an hour, I think, in the morning just going, okay, where are we going? And that's where I found the other groups had spent the extra time figuring out where their character development was going and how it was going to end. They knew how much to put in each chapter, whereabouts. Yeah.
I think that's a good point in the planning stages. Again, I'll reference the videos. We have 4 videos online from Abbottsley, and they spoke about the fact that they went over in their planning time, and to not worry if you go over in your planning time, because going over in your planning time actually helps you in the long run. Mm-hmm. And they also spoke really clearly about making sure everyone was comfortable with how the story was panning out. Yeah. If everyone believes in the story, I think, you know, if you're working as a team, so that will help you make sure you've got that really coherent, like clear start and finish. And yeah, definitely, I think we've all read books where they wake up and it was all a dream. And I think it's nice to have an ending that maybe is a bit different to that. So yeah, reminding students to plan from beginning to end is a really good point. Emma, do we have any other questions?
That's the only ones I can see in the chat right now, but I'll wait and see if anybody else wants to put anything in.
So, yeah, please, if you have any questions, now option to put them in. Otherwise, yeah, do feel free to give me a call. Also, I think you probably all have seen the email address. It's info@writeabookinAday.com. So myself or my colleague Julia will be looking after that inbox. But yeah, hopefully this has been a helpful webinar. I've definitely learnt a lot. So thank you, Kylie and Alicia. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share your knowledge and share your experience. And I hope your teams have a fantastic year this year, whether it's in person or hopefully it's in person if yeah, I mean, I think the lockdown experience, as we've proven, can be done and it can be done well. So, yes. You know, that's good too. Anything coming through, Emma, or are we all good?
No, just lots of thank yous from everyone.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Awesome. Well, oh, sorry, I do have a question here. I've just seen one about the fundraising students during lockdown can do. So yes, as most people will be aware, there is a $240 minimum sponsorship or fundraising for the books to be judged, eligible for judging. So we do have the sponsorship pages, and the idea behind the sponsorship pages was to, sorry, I've just got this on the screen, was to like kind of take some of that pressure off the team coordinators and allow students and parents to you know, ask their networks, their friends, their family to, you know, to sponsor and to kind of get involved. And so that's one way, I guess, while we're all in lockdown and we can't physically go and see people, that can all be done online. And you know, if you break it down and you have 10 students in your team, it's $24 per student. So that's a one thing, I guess. Otherwise, some schools do run the program like an incursion. That's another way for the sponsorship to come through. Alicia and Kylie, how do you guys do it?
I put it in my budget for the year, so I cover that off, and then I ask them to fundraise anything above that. So they send it out to their family and friends and ask for extra donations.
Fantastic. And Kylie?
I run it, I have a set price that covers the team fee, $70, and then some teams choose to raise money and go into the competition, and some just want to be part of the event and don't fundraise. So I leave it up to the students to, if they want to be judged, great, and they can raise the money, but I don't, it's kind of hard to promote that as well as all, because we were in lockdown for so long. It was like I really left it open, and but I did break it down like you just did then. If you would like to be judged, it's $40 each for your team or $30 each. So it wasn't a big figure for one student. It was like, oh, it's only $30 each, we can do that.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be more manageable.
Yeah.
For whatever, depending on how many numbers were in each team. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I think for people in lockdown, like I think those are they're the ways that are best for fundraising. And like the sponsorship pages, I think they've been around, I think maybe 2 or 3 years now, 3 years, because it's my 3rd year of competition. Yeah, and I think, I mean, we're getting people sponsoring from over the world, like from different parts of the world. I think, yeah, I mean, every school has different fundraising. I understand that as well. When we communicate, if we communicate with the parent email address, it is only to like remind people of the like what the cause is. It's the Kids Cancer Project. What this means is, you know, we fund childhood cancer research and that kind of thing. So I think people can connect with the cause a bit as well. So yeah, hopefully that answers everyone's questions. And as I mentioned before, give me a call. That phone number is my landline, obviously, but it is directed to my mobile because I am in lockdown. And also info@writeabookinadate.com is the email address. But I think that's it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you again, Alicia and Kylie, and also Emma for looking after our questions for us. And yeah, everyone have a good evening. And if you haven't filled out your census, I think it's tonight too. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.